Please help my mom. The voice hit him before the sight did. Ethan Carter froze halfway down the marble corridor, a cleaning rag still in his hand. From the corner of the hallway, a small figure ran toward him, a girl no older than 7, hair tangled, face streaked with tears. Her shoes slapped the floor in panic. She crashed into his legs and gripped his uniform like it was armor. They're hurting her. In the office. She can't breathe. Ethan's body went still. Years of discipline rose before thought could. The mop handle clattered to the ground as he knelt to her level. Who? He asked, calm but sharp. Men. In suits. My mom, she's the boss. They're beating her. The words came like broken glass. Ethan looked down the long hallway. The frosted glass doors of the executive suite glowed faintly at the end. Inside something crashed. Then silence. Every part of him screamed to stay out of it. A janitor doesn't open that door. A janitor cleans what's left behind. But the part of him that once answered to different calls, the one he'd buried beneath years of quiet work, had already decided. He pressed a trembling finger to his lips. Stay here, he said softly, behind the cart. Don't move till I say. The girl nodded, clutching the edge of the gray cleaning cart like a lifeline. Her wide eyes followed him as he turned toward the door. Another sound came, a muffled cry. A dull thud, the quick shuffle of polished shoes. Ethan's pulse steadied instead of racing. His breathing slowed. The hallway around him faded. One thought remained. Don't let her see what comes next. He reached for the handle. The instant the door opened, his quiet life ended, and the man he used to be woke up. Ethan Carter's day usually began before sunrise, when the city was still half asleep and the streets smelled faintly of rain and fuel. He liked those hours best. Quiet, predictable, no surprises. By 6, he'd already swiped his badge through the service entrance of Ellison Tower, the 40-story monument to ambition that glimmered over the skyline. While executives slept behind tinted windows, he moved through empty corridors, a steady rhythm of mop, wipe, repeat. He didn't mind the work. It kept his hands busy and his thoughts orderly. Routine meant safety. After a decade of noise and chaos overseas, silence was his luxury. At home, silence carried a different sound. The soft breathing of his 9-year-old daughter Alice, curled under blankets covered in paint stains from her after-school projects. She was the reason he took this job. The reason he traded medals for mops. He used to wear a uniform that made people salute. Now his name tag barely earned a glance. But when Alice smiled at him before school, a front tooth missing, he knew he'd made the right trade. He never talked about what came before. The neighbors thought he was just another single dad doing what he could. Only the scars across his knuckles hinted at something less ordinary. When people asked, he said he'd done field work, which wasn't exactly a lie. Losing Sarah had hollowed him out. Cancer had taken her slow and cruel, and when she was gone, the Army's discipline was the only thing that stopped him from unraveling completely. Alice was 6 then, too young to understand why her mother's side of the bed stayed cold. He promised her that night he'd never leave her behind for any mission again. That promise turned into the quiet life he built, one paycheck, one school lunch, one bedtime story at a time. Ellison Tower never cared who he'd been. It only cared that the floors gleamed and the trash bins disappeared by dawn. He liked it that way. Being invisible was safe. He could listen to the echo of power without being part of it. Sometimes, though, he'd catch glimpses through glass doors. Men in tailored suits laughing too loud. Women in heels moving like they owned gravity. One of them was Olivia Ellison, the CEO herself. He'd seen her once, years ago, walking the lobby with a group of investors. Confident, composed. She moved like someone who'd never had to explain herself. Their eyes had met for a fraction of a second, and then she'd looked away, already back in her world of decisions and deadline. Ethan didn't resent her. People like Olivia lived in a different universe, one where problems could be solved by phone calls and contracts. His world was simpler. Sweep, scrub, survive. Yet every night before he left work, he'd stand by the large glass windows overlooking the city. Below, headlights streamed like veins of light across the streets. Above, the tower's logo glowed in cold white letters. Allison Industries. He often wondered how many of those people inside ever looked down, saw the men who cleaned after them, and thought they mattered. He didn't need them to notice. What mattered was getting home before Alice fell asleep. He'd drop his work gloves on the kitchen counter, heat up leftovers, and listen as she told him stories about school, her voice rising and falling with the same rhythm he'd once heard in radio static on the field. That sound was life. Still, in quiet moments, When the apartment lights dimmed and Alice's breathing slowed, the old world crept back. He'd dream of noise, shouts, the metallic snap of rifle bolts, the smell of sand and blood. He'd wake before dawn, heartbeat steady, because fear never left completely. It just learned to wait. Every morning he'd tell himself the same thing: stay small, stay quiet, stay useful. He believed it until that night. The night a child from the other world, Olivia Ellison's world, ran down his hallway crying for help. The night when silence cracked open, and the man he'd tried to bury took a single step toward the sound of danger. The door slammed open under Ethan's hand. For a split second he registered the chaos. A luxury office torn out of its calm, papers scattered like leaves in a storm. A woman stood near the corner fighting to stay upright while three men in dark suits closed in on her. Another man was already on the floor, groaning. "Who the hell?" one of them began, but Ethan was already moving. The first blow came without warning, a sharp, practiced strike that caught the nearest man at the elbow. Bone cracked under the pressure. Ethan pivoted, using the man's weight to pull him down and drive him in the desk's corner. The second attacker swung wildly, too much muscle, not enough precision. Ethan ducked low, grabbed the man's belt and shoved him backward into the wall. Years of drills surfaced like a reflex. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. Every movement was clean, economic, deliberate. When the third man reached inside his jacket, Ethan reacted faster than thought, pushing forward and twisting the wrist until the gun dropped to the floor. A second later the man was down too, not dead, just quiet. Silence followed. Only the woman's ragged breathing filled the room. Her lip was split, one eye swelling fast. Blood dotted the collar of her white blouse. Ethan's voice came out steady. "You're safe now." She stared at him as if she didn't understand. "Who are you?" He didn't answer yet. He crouched, checked the pulse of one of the unconscious men and nudged the gun far out of reach. Then he turned back to her. "You can sit," he said quietly. "You're bleeding." She took a shaky step and nearly collapsed. He caught her, guided her toward the leather couch against the wall. His grip was firm but careful. When he eased her down, she winced and reached for her ribs. "My daughter," she gasped. "She's safe," Ethan said. "She's with me in the hall." "What happened?" Olivia Ellison, though he didn't say her name aloud, tried to speak but words tangled in shock. She coughed. "Tasted blood. They said orders from Mr. Blackwood. He wants control of the company. He said he'd take it by force if he had to." Ethan had no idea who Blackwood was, but the name carried power, and power meant danger that wouldn't stop here. He glanced around the office. No security, no alarms. These men hadn't been afraid of being caught. "You need medical help," he said. "No hospitals," she cut in sharply, voice cracking but urgent. "He'll find me. He owns too much. Everything." Ethan paused. Logic told him to step back. This was none of his business. But the girl's small voice from the hallway echoed in his mind. "They're hurting my mom." That was reason enough. He tore a strip from one of the men's jackets and pressed it gently to the cut above her eyebrow. "You're concussed. You'll feel worse soon. Can you walk?" She nodded faintly. "Then we leave now." Her eyes widened. "Where?" "Somewhere he won't look," Ethan said. He crossed the room, opened the door and signaled to the girl. She ran to her mother, burying her face against her shoulder. Olivia pulled her close, trembling. Ethan scanned the hallway. No movement yet, but that wouldn't last. He guided them both toward the service elevator, the one nobody else used, the one only he knew how to override with his janitor's badge. As the doors slid shut, Olivia's gaze drifted to the bruises forming on his forearms, the quiet efficiency in his breathing. "You've done this before," she said softly. He didn't respond. The hum of the elevator filled the silence. When the doors opened onto the maintenance level, he led them through a series of dim corridors to the parking garage. Every motion was instinct. Watch corners. Keep low. Listen. He stopped beside a dented old truck near the exit ramp. "Get in." Olivia hesitated. "I don't even know your name." "Ethan," he said. "Carter." She blinked, realizing. "You're the janitor." "Not tonight." He started the engine. The truck growled, loud against the silence of marble and glass above them. As they pulled out onto the back road, the tower loomed in the rearview mirror, tall, perfect, unfeeling. "Harper." The little girl clutched her mother's arm, whispering questions. Olivia couldn't answer. Ethan kept his eyes forward. 5 years of restraint, cracked in a single night. The soldier he'd locked away was awake again, and with him came all the instincts he'd tried to forget. Protect, plan, survive. Olivia glanced sideways at him. Beneath the plain uniform and calm eyes, she sensed the controlled danger there. A man built for crises, not cleaning floors. "Where are you taking us?" she asked finally. "Home," he said. "You'll be safe there." In her world, safety came from contracts and bodyguards. In his, it came from knowing the exits, trusting no one, and keeping the people who couldn't fight behind you. As the city lights fell away behind them, Olivia leaned her head back, exhaustion pulling her under. Ethan kept driving, jaw set, scanning mirrors every few seconds. He didn't know who this Blackwood was, or why men with training and money would attack their own CEO, but he knew one thing: calling the cops would only hand them over faster. Whoever these people worked for, they had reach, and reach meant systems, signals, and eyes in every direction. Only invisibility would keep them alive now. The night swallowed the truck as it merged onto the old highway. Ethan gripped the wheel tighter, aware of the sleeping child in the back seat and the injured woman beside him. He told himself he was only doing what any decent man would. But deep down he knew better. He wasn't saving a stranger. He was answering a call he thought he'd buried years ago. The call of a man who couldn't walk away from injustice, no matter how much peace it cost him. Olivia woke to the smell of coffee and antiseptic. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, the dull pulse of a concussion she half remembered earning. The world came back in fragments, the men in suits, the blows, her daughter's cry, the janitor's face cutting through chaos like calm in a storm. She tried to sit up too fast. Pain flared along her ribs. A hand appeared in front of her before she could fall. "Easy," Ethan said quietly. "You hit hard ground." Her eyes adjusted to the dim room. The walls were close, the furniture old but clean, books stacked on a shelf, a patchwork couch, a faded photograph of a woman and child by the window. Nothing about it matched the world she came from. "Where am I?" Her voice came out sharp, raw. "In my place," Ethan said. "South side of the city. You passed out in the truck. Didn't think you'd appreciate a hospital. I didn't ask you to bring me here." He didn't flinch. "No, but it's the only reason you're still breathing." The tone wasn't prideful, it was factual. He poured coffee into a chipped mug, slid it across the small table beside her. "Drink slowly. You've got a mild concussion." Olivia looked at him fully now. The same uniform she'd seen in the building hallways, but the way he carried himself was different. Even standing still, there was a kind of contained readiness in his frame. "My daughter?" "She's fine," Ethan said. "In the next room with my kid. They're drawing. Harper's quieter than Alice, but they're getting along." Olivia's shoulders eased slightly. Then her eyes narrowed. "You have a child?" "Yeah." He sat across from her. 9 years old. "Name's Alice." She studied him, suspicion flickering with gratitude. "You expect me to believe this isn't something planned? That you just happened to be in the hallway when my office was attacked?" Ethan's gaze didn't change. "If I were part of it, you'd already be gone." Her breath caught at the bluntness of it. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet of the apartment filled with small sounds. The low hum of an old fridge, the rustle of paper from the next room, the faint laughter of two children finding peace in crayons. Olivia pressed a hand to her ribs. "Who are you, really?" "Maintenance," he said simply. She gave a soft, bitter laugh. "Maintenance doesn't break arms in 2 moves." He took a sip of coffee, unfazed. Everyone used to be something else. Her instinct was to demand answers, names, credentials, control. But control was what she'd lost the moment those men had stepped into her office. And this man, this quiet janitor who treated danger like dust to sweep away, seemed immune to the hierarchy she lived by. "I need to make a call," she said, searching for her phone. "Not yet." "Excuse me?" "They'll trace it," Ethan replied. "If this Blackwood sent professionals, they'll be watching your network, your accounts, maybe your car's GPS. Right now, they think you disappeared. We keep it that way." Olivia's hands trembled. Whether from anger or fear, she couldn't tell. "You can't possibly understand what's at stake." "My company, your daughter," Ethan interrupted softly, "is what's at stake." The words landed heavier than any argument. Her throat tightened, pride colliding with truth. He continued, steady as ever. "You're used to commanding people. I get it. But if you want both of you to see tomorrow, you'll need to let that go for a while. I know how to make people disappear safely. You don't." It was the tone of someone used to giving orders in darker places. A soldier's cadence. She leaned back, studying him. "You're military." He didn't answer, just started clearing the empty mugs. "You should rest." "I'm not going to sleep in a stranger's apartment." "You already did," he said, turning toward the kitchen sink. The retort silenced her. He moved with quiet precision, checking the window locks, glancing at the street through half-drawn blinds, the constant awareness of someone who never stopped calculating risk. Olivia noticed the small signs of another life around him, a school schedule pinned to the fridge, a drawing taped to the wall that said for Dad. It felt disarmingly normal, almost peaceful. Her pulse slowed. "Why help me?" she asked finally. Ethan turned. "Because no one else would have." That answer cut through every layer of suspicion she'd built. No agenda, no flattery. Just truth. She exhaled, long and unsteady. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he said. The air between them softened, not friendly, but human. Two people from opposite worlds forced to share the same fragile space. From the other room, Alice's voice floated through the door. "Dad, can we show them the picture?" Ethan called back. "In a minute, sweetheart." Olivia caught the way his expression changed, the hard edges giving way to something gentler. That was the real him, she realized. Not just the soldier, not just the janitor. A father doing everything he could to protect the small world he had left. She looked down at her bandaged hands, the faint tremor in her fingers. "You said it's safer if I stay invisible," she murmured. "How long can anyone live like that?" "As long as it takes," Ethan said. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far off, distant but approaching. Ethan's eyes flicked to the window. "They'll come looking sooner than I thought," he muttered. Olivia met his gaze. For the first time, fear wasn't the only thing she felt. There was respect, reluctant but real. She nodded slowly. "Then I guess we do it your way." Ethan gave a small nod back. "Good, because from here on there's no halfway." He reached over, turned off the lamp, and the room fell into calm shadow. In that quiet, two worlds, wealth and anonymity, stood side by side for the first time. The next morning began not with panic but with the soft scrape of pencils on paper. For a few seconds, Olivia didn't recognize the sound. Her eyes opened slowly, expecting sterile hospital light or the white echo of a penthouse. Instead, there was the quiet hum of life, coffee brewing, faint laughter, the creak of wooden floors under small feet. She sat up carefully. The dizziness had dulled, though pain lingered like a bruise inside her skull. On the chair near the bed, someone had folded a clean shirt and a pair of loose sweatsuits. A note sat on top, written in blocky handwriting. "For comfort, kitchens through the hall." She hesitated before standing. The floor was cool beneath her bare feet, the hallway narrow and lined with photographs, none framed expensively but each real. Ethan and his daughter at a fair. A small hand covered in paint, a woman's smile captured mid-laughter. Olivia slowed, touching the edge of one photo. There was warmth here, a kind she hadn't felt in years. In the kitchen, Ethan was at the stove, flipping pancakes with methodical precision. His daughter sat at the small table beside another little girl, Harper, who was drawing something with fierce concentration. For a moment none of them noticed her. She simply stood there, watching the scene unfold. The way Ethan's shoulders eased whenever Alice giggled. The way Harper had already stopped trembling under the gentle energy of this home. It was disarming. Then Ethan turned, eyes catching hers. "Morning," he said. "You should sit before you fall again." His tone was calm but not unkind. She moved to the table, still a little unsteady. Harper looked up and beamed. "Mom, we're drawing a dragon that guards people. Alice says her dad taught her to draw brave things." Olivia managed a small smile. "Did she?" Alice nodded, her ponytail bobbing. "Dad says if you draw what scares you, it stops being scary." Ethan didn't look up from the pan. "Sometimes it works." The simplicity of the statement hung in the air longer than she expected. It wasn't a lecture, just a truth. When he finally brought the food over, he set a plate in front of each of them with quiet efficiency. "Eat slow," he said. "You're still recovering." Olivia picked up her fork. The pancakes were uneven but soft, buttery, comforting. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had cooked for her without an assistant present. For the first time in years, she didn't think about calorie counts or meetings or investor calls, just the smell of food and the warmth of being alive. Harper was talking again, telling Alice about her favorite park and the stuffed giraffe she'd left behind at their apartment. Alice listened intently, promising they could find another giraffe later. Olivia caught Ethan's faint smile at the sound of their laughter. It struck her. This man who lived in the background of her empire had managed to build something she never could. Peace. "You keep this place very clean," she said softly, almost to herself. He looked up. "Old habits." "No," she said. "It's more than that. You pay attention." He shrugged. It's the only way I know how to keep things from falling apart. The words landed deeper than he seemed to intend. Olivia found herself studying him again. The quiet discipline in how he moved, the careful control of someone who'd spent years keeping chaos at bay. When breakfast ended, Ethan told the girls to play in the living room while he washed dishes. Olivia tried to help, but the moment she stood, her head spun again. "I've got it," he said, gently steering her back toward the chair. "You're not used to sitting still, are you?" "Not really." "Then you'll have to learn." It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty, the voice of a man who understood recovery as survival. She didn't argue. Minutes passed in comfortable quiet. Outside, morning light crept across the wall. The girls' voices mingled in soft bursts of excitement as they built a tower from books and shoeboxes. Olivia leaned back, feeling something unfamiliar settle over her safety. Fragile, temporary, but real. She looked at Ethan, drying plates with military precision. "You have a system for everything, don't you?" He smirked faintly. "Order keeps the noise out." "What kind of noise?" "The kind that sticks around when you think it's gone." She didn't ask for details. Some things didn't need explaining. When the dishes were done, he sat across from her, elbows resting on the table. "You need a few days before we move again," he said. "Your balance is off, and you're still disoriented. The kids are safe here. Nobody knows this address except my landlord, and she thinks I'm just another single dad who overpays rent." Olivia frowned slightly. "You're risking a lot for people you barely know." Ethan held her gaze. "You think I'd leave a kid crying in a hallway?" "No," she said softly, "but most people would have called security and gone back to work." "I'm not most people." The truth in that statement pressed between them. For the rest of the morning, the apartment moved in a rhythm Olivia had never known. Unhurried, quiet, human. She helped the girls make sandwiches for lunch, awkwardly laughing when Harper spread jam like she was painting a wall. Ethan fixed a loose drawer handle, humming under his breath. Every so often Olivia's phone instinctively called to her from her bag on the counter, a lifeline to a world she wasn't sure she wanted back yet. She resisted. By afternoon, Harper was asleep on the couch, and Alice was reading beside her. Olivia and Ethan stood near the doorway, watching the two girls so different, yet utterly at peace. "They're not scared anymore," Olivia whispered. "They trust you," Ethan said. She glanced at him. "And you?" He thought for a moment. "I trust the quiet. It tells me we're still okay." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. For a man who'd lived in violence, peace wasn't natural, it was earned. She began to see what it cost him to keep it. Outside, rain started to fall, a soft patter against the window. Olivia turned to him. "You could have walked away." He shook his head. "Some people don't get to." She didn't know if he meant her, or himself. Maybe both. The rain thickened, masking the sounds of the city beyond. For now the world was smaller, just 4 people sharing borrowed safety. 2 adults who had built walls so different yet carried the same cracks inside them. Ethan poured her another cup of coffee and sat down. For the first time she didn't see a janitor. She saw the quiet steadiness of someone who had seen too much and still chose to be kind, and though neither of them said it, they both knew this peace couldn't last. It began with a ring. Not loud, just the brittle chime of an old landline that rarely spoke. But in the quiet of Ethan's apartment, it cut through the calm like a blade. He froze mid-step, towel still in his hands from drying the dishes. Olivia looked up from the couch where Harper and Alice had fallen asleep under a shared blanket. A storybook opened between them. "Do you get many calls?" she whispered. He shook his head slowly. "Haven't used that phone in months." The phone rang again. 3 short bursts, then silence. Ethan crossed the room, every motion deliberate. On the final ring he lifted the receiver halfway, then stopped. He didn't answer, just listened. A pause, then a voice, smooth and cold. "Is this Mr. Henderson?" Ethan's stomach tightened. He didn't move. "You have the wrong number." "My apologies," the caller said. Too calm, too polite. Then the line went dead. He replaced the receiver, staring at it as though it were something venomous. Olivia rose from the couch. "What is it?" "Not a wrong number," he said. "They're fishing." Her breath caught. Lysander. The name hung in the air like smoke. Ethan crossed to the window and tilted the blinds just enough to see the street below. At first nothing. Then there it was, a black sedan idling across from the building, headlights dimmed, the kind of vehicle that looked like it belonged nowhere and everywhere. 2 silhouettes sat inside. "You're sure it's him?" Ethan asked. Olivia nodded, her voice barely audible. "That's his way. A quiet call first, then the watchers. Her composure cracked for the first time. She pressed a hand to her temple, whispering to herself, "He's covering it as corporate damage control, but this is a manhunt." Ethan turned from the window. "Pack a bag, keep it light, 10 minutes. She blinked. "We can't Yes, we can," he interrupted. "They know this address. You don't keep kids near a live wire." The calm certainty in his voice silenced protest. She moved fast, gathering what little they had brought. Ethan disappeared into his bedroom, emerging with a small canvas duffel that had clearly been waiting for a moment like this. Olivia hesitated when she saw it. "You planned for this." He zipped it shut. "I plan for everything." He crouched by the couch, brushing a hand against Alice's shoulder. "Wake up, sweetheart." Quiet voices now, okay? Alice stirred, groggy but obedient. Harper blinked awake beside her. Olivia knelt and pulled her daughter close. "We're going to play a game, honey," she whispered. "A quiet one like hide and seek. You just hold my hand and don't let go." Harper nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Within minutes, they were down the back stairwell. Ethan's steps were soundless, his hands skimming the rail without a squeak. Outside, rain glossed the alley in silver streaks. He scanned both ends, then motioned them forward. The truck was parked where he'd left it, half hidden behind the dumpster. He opened the passenger door and guided the girls inside first, then helped Olivia climb in. Just as he turned the key, headlights flared behind them. "Hold on," Ethan muttered. The truck roared to life. He reversed hard, tires splashing through puddles, then shot down the narrow lane. The sedan followed, silent but steady. Olivia's hand gripped the dashboard. "They won't stop." "I'm counting on that," Ethan said, turning sharply onto a side street. He drove with surgical precision, threading through the city's back veins, routes he'd memorized from years of invisible work. Service tunnels, alleys between warehouses, forgotten maintenance roads. His calm frightened her more than the chase itself. After 15 minutes he cut the lights and rolled into the shadow of an abandoned parking structure. The truck idled low, hidden between pillars. The sedan passed the entrance without slowing. Only when the sound faded did anyone speak. Olivia exhaled shakily. "He won't give up, not after tonight." Ethan looked straight ahead, jaw tight. "Then we make sure he can't find you again." He turned off the engine. The rain tapped softly on the windshield. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean we disappear properly. No traces, no patterns, new clothes, no phones, no credit cards." Olivia stared at him. "You've done this before." He didn't deny it. "Not for myself." She realized then what maintenance had always meant. Someone who cleaned up the world's messes without leaving footprints. Her voice softened. "You could have walked away tonight. You didn't." "Neither did you," he said quietly. They sat in silence, the hum of the city distant and low. The two children slept in the back seat, heads leaning together. Olivia turned to him. "Lysander used to be my mentor. He taught me how to win. Then he started calling that control. When I tried to step away, he decided no one walks away from him." Ethan's eyes flicked to the mirror, scanning the empty lot. "You think this is just business?" "No," she said bitterly. "It's ownership." He nodded slowly. "Then we don't play defense." She frowned. Meaning we stop running once we know what he's using to track you. Right now, we're ghosts. We stay ghosts until I say otherwise." Olivia looked at him, at the precision of his movements, the faint scar along his jaw, the way he seemed both completely still and entirely ready. "I thought you were just quiet," she murmured, "but you're planning 6 steps ahead." "Quiet doesn't mean unprepared." Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. "What about your daughter?" she asked softly. "You'll uproot her whole life for this." Ethan turned toward the back seat, where Alice slept soundly beside Harper. "She's lived with worse kinds of movement," he said. "She'll be okay. Kids adapt faster than adults." He started the engine again, voice steady. "We'll head north. I've got somewhere safe for a few days." "Where?" "You'll see," he said. Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then leaned back, exhaustion overtaking fear. Through half-closed eyes she watched the janitor who wasn't just a janitor, guiding the truck into the rain-soaked darkness. The rhythmic wipers kept time with the pulse of something new, trust born out of necessity. And somewhere behind that quiet rhythm, the old world she'd built began to crumble, piece by piece. Because the man driving her into the storm wasn't saving her out of duty anymore. He was doing it because he'd decided she was worth saving. The road turned from asphalt to dirt, long before dawn. By the time the truck reached the ridge, Fog curled low across the mountain pass, wrapping the world in quiet. Olivia leaned forward, peering through the mist. Where are we? Ethan slowed the truck near a weathered sign half buried in weeds. The lettering had faded, but she caught the last word hollow. Used to be my wife's family land, he said. No one's been up here in years. Power lines are dead, signals gone. That's what makes it safe. He parked beside a narrow clearing where a small cabin stood, crooked porch, tin roof. The kind of place built before anyone cared about luxury, but to Olivia it looked like sanctuary. When she stepped out, the cold air bit her lungs. Behind her, Harper blinked sleepily, clutching her stuffed giraffe. A new one, Alice had given her the night before. The girls stared at the trees with the wonder children reserved for the unknown. "This is where we're staying?" Olivia asked. "For a while," Ethan said. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep us warm." Inside, the cabin was sparse. A few chairs, a cast-iron stove, shelves lined with dust and old jars. Ethan moved through it with practiced familiarity. He checked the locks, tested the windows, then knelt to start a fire. Olivia watched him work. His movements were precise but gentle, as if he'd done this 100 times. When the flames caught, the room filled with a soft orange glow. "You know how to do everything," she said quietly. "Not everything," he replied, "just enough to stay alive." The simplicity of that answer carried more weight than she expected. By afternoon, the girls were outside collecting kindling. Their laughter echoed faintly through the trees. Olivia sat at the small wooden table, watching Ethan repair a lantern. "You said this place was your wife's family's," she said. "You come here often?" "Used to," he said without looking up. "After she died, I stopped. Couldn't stand the quiet." Olivia's gaze softened. "She was sick." He nodded. "Cancer. 3 years from first diagnosis to last breath." He adjusted the lantern's glass and struck a match. "After that, I promised Alice I'd find peace somewhere. This is what I came up with. Janitorial work in silence." There was no bitterness in his tone, just fact. Olivia found herself admiring that. Peace looks different for everyone. She said, "Doesn't last long for some." His eyes flicked to hers. The air between them held something unspoken, an understanding that neither had planned for. Later, Ethan showed the children how to build a small fire ring outside. "Rocks first," he instructed, his voice gentle but firm. "Keeps the flames from spreading. Fire's a tool, not a toy." Olivia watched Harper mimic his motions, face glowing with focus. Alice guided her hand, whispering, "Like this. My dad says you have to respect the fire or it'll stop listening." The girls giggled at that, their laughter bright against the mountain stillness. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her daughter laugh like that freely without fear. When evening came, Ethan cooked beans and rice over the stove. Olivia offered to help, but he shook his head. "You'll just make it slower," he teased lightly. "Excuse me?" she said, half offended, half amused. He smiled faintly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "You strike me as someone who's never used a pan that didn't come from a catalog." She folded her arms. "I've cooked before." He handed her a wooden spoon, then stirred. The rhythm of the spoon scraping the pot filled the silence. It felt strangely intimate. Two people from opposite worlds sharing something as small and human as dinner. When they finally ate, the meal was plain but satisfying. The girls fell asleep soon after, curled together by the fire. Olivia and Ethan sat in the quiet glow, 2 mugs of tea steaming between them. For a while they didn't speak. The crackle of the fire was enough. "You miss her," Olivia said finally. Ethan nodded once. "Every day. But it's different now. I stopped asking why. Just try to be someone she'd still recognize." Olivia looked into the firelight. "I don't think I've ever lived like that." "How do you live, then?" "By forward motion. Meetings. Numbers. People pretending loyalty until they see something they can take." He studied her face. "And yet, you stayed honest. That's what got you hurt." She gave a small bitter laugh. "Honesty's expensive. You of all people should know that." He didn't argue. The flames reflected in his eyes, steady, thoughtful. "Maybe, but it's the only currency that still means anything." The quiet stretched again, soft and heavy. Olivia felt something shift inside her, something she hadn't expected. Safety not as a condition, but as a person. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You're good with kids." Ethan's gaze drifted toward the sleeping girls. "Kids are easy, they don't pretend." "You say that like adults always do." He looked back at her. "Don't they?" Olivia held his eyes, realizing he wasn't asking out of cynicism. He was asking from experience. I used to, she admitted. Pretend I wasn't lonely. Pretend I was untouchable. You're not pretending now, he said quietly. Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. For a long time they sat in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't empty but full of everything that didn't need words. Eventually, Ethan stood and draped an old blanket over her shoulders. You should rest. We'll leave again in a few days when I'm sure they're not tracking us. She caught his hand before he could step away. Thank you, she said, voice trembling slightly. Not just for saving us. For this. For letting my daughter feel normal again. He nodded. Normal's the one thing worth fighting for. When he finally lay down across the room, Olivia stayed awake a while longer, watching the fire fade to embers. The mountain air hummed softly outside, wind through pine, a world untouched by greed or violence. And for the first time in her adult life, Olivia Ellison felt small in the best possible way. In the space between them, something fragile but real began to form, not romance yet, not even trust fully, but a quiet promise that neither was as alone as they thought. The night started calm, the kind of quiet that tricks you into believing peace might last. The fire had burned down to a red whisper, the girls asleep beside it under shared blankets. Outside, the forest was a cathedral of soundless trees, windless and still. Ethan sat by the window, awake as always. He didn't trust peace. Peace was just the space between alarms. Olivia stirred behind him. You never sleep, she murmured. He shook his head. Not when I'm responsible for other people. She pulled her blanket tighter. We've been here 3 days. Maybe they lost us. He wanted to believe her. But the last time he believed in maybe, people died. That's not how men like Blackwood work, he said quietly. He'll keep looking until he finds something to break. Olivia frowned. Then what are we waiting for? For him to make the first mistake. As if on cue, something outside clicked. Barely audible, a mechanical tick, small but sharp. Ethan froze. Get the girls, he whispered. Olivia didn't ask questions. She moved to the corner, shaking Harper and Alice awake. Quiet now, baby. Remember our game? Hide and seek. Ethan's instincts took over. Silent steps to the window, scanning the tray line. A faint red light blinked once in the dark. A drone's infrared eye. Skimming low, his pulse steadied, breath slow. They found us, he said. How? Olivia's voice was tight. Thermal scan, probably picked up the stove heat. He reached under the table, retrieving a metal box he'd stashed earlier, an old field kit. Inside, a folding knife, a flare gun, 2 flashbangs and a single radio transmitter with the battery removed. Olivia stared at it. You kept all this here? Never trust the quiet, he muttered, loading the flare gun. Then came the sound he dreaded, tires crunching gravel, headlights cut through the trees, sweeping over the cabin walls. Ethan snapped into motion. Basement, now. There's no basement, she said. There is, he replied, moving to the pantry. He yanked aside a rug and pried open a trapdoor hidden beneath warped planks. The smell of cold earth rushed up. Go, he ordered. Olivia guided the girls down the ladder. Ethan followed last, pulling the door shut above them just as boots hit the porch. They crouched in the dark. The only light came from the faint glow of a crack between floorboards. Through it, Olivia saw shadows moving. 3, maybe 4 men. A voice called out. We know you're in there, Miss Ellison. Smooth, confident. Come out now and we'll keep the child unharmed. Harper whimpered. Olivia pressed her close. Ethan raised a finger to his lips, then leaned to the side, whispering in Olivia's ear. There's an exit tunnel. My wife's uncle built its storm passage. It leads to the ravine. She nodded, trembling. What about you? I'll buy time. Before she could stop him, he climbed back up and lifted the trapdoor just enough to slip through. Upstairs, the door swung open, boots stomping on wood. Ethan stayed low, silent shadow among shadows. He grabbed one man by the collar as he passed, pulling him down hard. The man's head hit the floor with a dull crack. The others turned. Contact, one shouted. The room erupted in motion. Ethan moved fast. Flashbang pin pulled. Count to 2 toes. White light flared. Deafening blast followed. The men staggered, blinded. Ethan lunged through smoke, grabbing the dropped weapon. 2 quick strikes, muscle memory, precision, no hesitation. But there were more outside backup. Through the window he saw at least 2 vehicles, silhouettes shifting with rifles raised. He ducked behind the couch, firing the flare gun into the curtains. Fire leapt instantly, racing along the fabric to the ceiling. The room bloomed orange. Down below, Olivia covered the girl's ears as the explosion shook dust from the beams. "We have to go," she whispered. She guided them through the narrow tunnel, dirt walls, low ceiling. The air grew cold and damp. Above them, flames crackled. Smoke began to seep through the cracks. The cabin, their fragile peace, was burning. Olivia kept moving, heart pounding, one hand on each child. Behind her, faint thuds echoed. Maybe gunfire, maybe Ethan. She couldn't tell. Then the tunnel widened to an opening that looked out over the ravine. Moonlight silvered the rocks below. "Out," she said, pushing the girls ahead. They climbed, slipping on mud, until they reached the open ground. The cold bit hard now, wind sharp against their faces. Harper turned, eyes wide. "Where's Ethan?" Olivia stared back at the black mouth of the tunnel. For one terrible second, there was nothing. Then a silhouette. Ethan crawled out, coughing smoke, face streaked with soot. Behind him, the cabin roared, flames devouring the roof. Alice ran to him. He lifted her easily, holding her close. "Everyone okay?" Olivia nodded, though her voice shook. "You shouldn't have stayed." "Couldn't let them trace where we went," he said, glancing toward the blaze. "They'll assume we burned with it." They stood there, watching the only shelter they'd had collapse in on itself, sparks drifting upward into the night. The firelight flickered across their faces, exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, shared loss. Harper whispered, "Where do we go now?" Ethan looked out toward the forest. "Downhill. There's a river 2 miles from here. We follow it east, till sunrise." Olivia caught his arm. "You're hurt." He glanced at his shoulder, blood seeping through his sleeve. "I've had worse. You need rest." "So do they," he said. "But rest gets us caught." The girls leaned against each other, too tired to protest. Olivia wrapped her arms around them as the wind carried ash through the trees. They started walking, 4 small figures against the endless dark. Every branch creak sounded like pursuit, every gust like a warning. After an hour, the fire was a distant glow behind them, a small wound in the night. Ethan walked slightly ahead, scanning the path. Olivia watched his silhouette, steady even in pain, purposeful even when broken. "You lit it on purpose," she said quietly. "Had to," he replied. "Fire destroys more than wood. It confuses heat sensors. It's the only way they lose the trail." She realized then that every move he made, every risk, was calculated to keep them alive. He slowed when he heard her stumble, turning to steady her. For a heartbeat, their eyes met in the dark. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. By dawn they reached the river, thin, cold, and endless. The girls collapsed beside it, too exhausted to cry. Ethan knelt, washing the blood from his arm. Olivia sat beside him, silent. Behind them, smoke still rose faintly from the mountain. Their safe haven was gone, erased. Olivia stared at the reflection in the water, 4 shapes together but homeless. What now? Ethan looked up, eyes hollow but resolute. "Now we stop running long enough to think. Then we make them chase something that doesn't exist." She nodded, though the words felt heavier than hope. They were fugitives now from power, from memory, from everything they once were. But as the morning light touched the river, she felt a strange calm. Because whatever came next, they would face it together. The rain started before sunrise, steady and cold. By mid-morning they had built a small lean-to near the riverbank, little more than branches, tarps, and grit. The girls slept beneath it, wrapped in blankets that smelled faintly of smoke and pine. Olivia sat close to the fire. Ethan had coaxed from damp wood. Her hands were trembling, not from cold but from everything she had held in for days. "They won't stop," she said finally, voice low. "You were right. He doesn't back off." Ethan stirred the embers, eyes half-shadowed by the flames. "Tell me about him." She looked up. "You don't know who Lysander Blackwood is?" "I know the type," he said. "But types aren't enough. I need details." She exhaled, as if releasing something poisonous. "He runs Blackwood Holdings, private capital, defense contracts, security tech. You wouldn't know his name because he pays to stay invisible. When my company, Ussel Industries, pulled out of a joint venture with him, he called it betrayal. I called it ethics." Ethan said nothing. He knew what ethics cost. He started quietly. Olivia continued. "Board pressure, hostile investors, fake rumors about mismanagement. When none of that worked, he turned personal. Calls, letters, gifts to my daughter's school. And when I blocked him, he sent the message we just lived through." She stared into the fire, the glow hardening her expression. He's not after money anymore. He wants ownership of me, of my company, of the story. Ethan watched her closely. So, what does he need that you haven't given him? Access, she said bitterly. Ellison Industries has a pending government contract for encrypted medical data secure enough to be worth billions. He wants the tech, but the code's locked in a system that requires my biometric key. So he tried to take it by force, Ethan said. Exactly. He can't buy it or fake it. He needs me alive, but compliant. Ethan leaned back, his expression unreadable. Then we make his compliance impossible. Olivia blinked. Meaning we stop surviving and start fighting. She shook her head. We can't. He has resource, and we have truth, he interrupted. And the one thing men like that fear more than exposure is loss of control. Olivia frowned. You think truth can beat him? It's not truth that beats him, Ethan said. It's who tells it first. The fire cracked, sending sparks into the misty air. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small waterproof pouch. Inside a map, a pen and a battered notebook. You said there's someone you trust, he said. Outside your company, someone old, maybe, but clean. She hesitated. Anselm Crow. He was my father's attorney before mine. Retired now. Somewhere in the mountains. I haven't spoken to him in months. Then he's perfect, Ethan said. If he's still alive, he's your lifeline. We contact him without a trace. She stared at him, uneasy admiration surfacing. You sound like you've done this before. He didn't look up. When people disappear for the wrong reasons, someone has to know how to find them. Silence fell. The river whispered nearby, endless and calm, as if mocking their turmoil. After a while, Olivia spoke again. I used to think power made me untouchable. Now I see it just makes you a bigger target. Ethan nodded. Power's just permission, given or taken. Integrity's what survives after it's gone. Her eyes softened. You sound like my father. Was he like you? She smiled faintly. Worse. But he believed something simple, that leadership means standing where the harm lands. I stopped doing that somewhere along the way. Ethan poked the fire. Then this is your way back. She studied him. You talk like a man who's fought more than wars. He didn't answer for a moment. The uniform changes. The fight doesn't. They let the quiet stretch again. Rain tapped softly on the tarp roof. In the corner, Alice stirred in her sleep, murmuring her father's name. Olivia looked toward the girls. They deserve better than this. They'll get it, Ethan said. But first we have to finish what he started. He tore a page from the notebook, scribbled something quickly, then handed her the pen. Your signature here, not a legal one, just confirmation. If I'm found before we reach Crow, he'll need proof you sent me. She hesitated before signing, the act feeling heavier than it should. You think he'll listen? He'll listen if he remembers who your father was, Ethan said, and if he doesn't, the truth will make him. She looked at him then. Really looked. The ash smudged across his jaw, the faint scar near his temple, the steadiness that seemed to anchor the chaos around him. You're different when you plan, she said softly. Colder, but focused. It's not cold, he said. It's control. And when this is over? He paused, the question landing deeper than she intended. When it's over, I go back to cleaning floors. That's the plan. She smiled faintly. You don't really believe that? He gave a quiet laugh. No, but it's a nice lie to live by. Later, while he walked the perimeter, Olivia sat alone by the river. The reflection of the fire danced on the water like a heartbeat. She felt the ache of exhaustion, but beneath it, something else. Clarity. Ethan was right. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Blackwood had turned her silence into power. It was time to turn his arrogance into proof. When Ethan returned, she was waiting with resolve in her eyes. If we're doing this, she said, we do it my way, strategically, publicly, and permanently. He raised an eyebrow. Your way. You said he fears exposure. Fine. Then we'll light a fire he can't contain. He crouched beside her, intrigued. Explain. My company's board still thinks I'm missing. If we leak proof of the attack, even indirectly, media will circle him before he can bury the story. Anselm can route it through journalists, who owe him favors. Ethan nodded slowly. Controlled chaos. She met his eyes. You handle the protection. I handle the narrative. He smiled. Small but genuine. Deal. In that moment, they stopped being protector and victim. They became partners. Two broken worlds converging on a single purpose. Thunder rolled again, deeper this time. Ethan glanced at the sky. We move at dawn, he said. Mountains make good cover until we reach the old highway. She nodded. I'll be ready. As he doused the fire, she reached out suddenly, fingers brushing his wrist. Ethan. He turned. Thank you for believing I'm more than what he tried to make me. He looked down at her hand on his, smoke curling between them. You don't need me to believe it, he said softly. You just needed to remember it. The rain stopped. The fire hissed out, leaving only smoke and the faint murmur of the river. Quiet, persistent, alive. The storm had taken their safety, but it had also given them something else: purpose. They were done running. Now they were coming for him. The night they stopped running was the coldest yet. A moon like tarnished glass hung over the valley, washing the pines in silver light. Ethan had chosen the ridge deliberately. High ground, one narrow road in, visibility for half a mile. It wasn't a home, but it was defendable. That was all they needed now. Inside a derelict ranger outpost, Olivia worked by the dim glow of an old battery lamp. Her hands trembled slightly as she keyed the burner radio, the static swallowing her voice before it cleared. Ensiln, it's Olivia. We're at the coordinates I sent. I've uploaded everything. The attack, the logs, the medical scans. Send it to every journalist who still owes you their conscience. Ensiln's voice crackled back, old but steady. Already done, my dear. By sunrise, half the world will know what that monster did. You've just ended Lysander Blackwood's empire. Her breath caught, part relief, part dread. Then he'll come for us. I expect he's already on his way, the old lawyer replied grimly. Ethan appeared in the doorway, face streaked with dirt, eyes sharp with focus. We've got movement, he said. 2 SUVs heading up the road. 10 minutes, maybe less. Olivia closed the radio, her heart thudding. How many? Too many, he said simply. But they'll expect panic. We'll give them discipline instead. Outside, the girls were asleep in the loft, exhausted from travel and fear. Ethan had told them it was a camping night. Harper had believed it. Alice hadn't. She just looked at her father and whispered, "You'll come back, right?" He had promised, because some lies are worth telling. Now, as wind bit through the open window, he moved through the cabin like a soldier possessed. He checked the traps he'd set earlier. Fishing wire stretched across the path at knee height. A cluster of glass bottles hanging from the eaves. An improvised trip flare ready to blind whoever came first. Each motion was clean, practiced, silent. Olivia followed, helping where she could. You think this will stop them? It's not about stopping, he said, securing a line. It's about slowing, long enough for your truth to finish the job. She glanced toward the flickering screen of her tablet, the transfer bar still crawling to completion. Evidence, files, recordings, everything that tied Blackwood to the violence. If we survive this, she whispered, the world will know who he really is. Ethan met her eyes. If we don't, they'll still know. That's what matters. Headlights appeared below the ridge. 2 vehicles, engines low, cutting across the gravel. Ethan moved to the window, watching. They're coming in silent. They know we're here. Olivia's breath quickened. What do? We make noise. He took a deep breath, loading a single round into the old hunting rifle he'd salvaged days ago. Go wake the kids. Get them to the back storage cellar. Wait for my signal. She hesitated. Ethan, go. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment. The man who had started as a shadow in a hallway, now standing between her family and the world's cruelty. Then she nodded and disappeared inside. Ethan knelt by the window. The first vehicle stopped halfway up the slope, lights dimming, men spilled out, black tactical gear, silent and methodical. The second truck idled behind them. He counted 6, maybe 7. 2 men. He drew a breath. All right, he murmured. Let's dance. The first flare snapped as a foot hit the trip line. A blast of white light filled the clearing. Before they could recover, Ethan squeezed the trigger. The rifle's crack split the night, sending one man tumbling back into the dirt. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets tore into the cabin walls, splintering wood, showering him with dust. He ducked behind the heavy table, reloading with calm precision. Below the chaos, Olivia herded the girls into the cellar, pulling the trapdoor shut above them. Harper clung to her arm, crying silently. Alice whispered, "He's done this before. He knows what he's doing." Upstairs, Ethan fired again. 2 controlled shots. One hit the tire of the front SUV. The other shattered a headlight, throwing the slope into half-darkness. The men adjusted, flanking wide. They moved like soldiers, disciplined, trained. Lysander's back. Ethan felt the old rhythm return, the one he'd sworn off when he walked away from the service. every motion measured, every second stretched. He wasn't thinking of death, only delay. A grenade clinked through the broken window. Ethan grabbed it mid-roll, hurled it back through the same opening. The explosion lit the trees outside like lightning. Smoke poured in. He coughed, vision blurring, then ducked low and crawled to the back door. Through the haze, one intruder broke in, tall, masked, gun raised. Ethan slammed the doorframe shut on his arm, wrenched the weapon free and drove his elbow into the man's throat. The body hit the floor. Ethan picked up the gun but didn't fire. Ammo was precious. From outside, a voice bellowed through a megaphone, smooth, commanding. "Mr. Carter, step outside and no one else gets hurt." Lysander. The sound of that voice froze the blood in Olivia's veins below. She pressed her hand to the cellar wall, whispering, "He's here." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You came yourself," he muttered. "Of course I did," Lysander called, tone almost amused. "The great janitor. You've caused me quite the headache, but this ends tonight. The world thinks Miss Ellison died in a tragic fire. Let's keep it that way, shall we?" Ethan crouched near the window. "You really think you're still in control?" "I always am," Lysander replied. "I built control." Ethan smiled faintly, blood on his lip. "Then maybe it's time you learned what it feels like to lose it." At that moment the final file uploaded. Olivia's tablet buzzed softly. Transfer complete. She grabbed the radio, whispering, "Anselm, it's live. Send it now." "Already done," came the crackled response. "By morning he'll be a ghost, surrounded by truth." Up above, Lysander advanced, confident, unaware his empire was already burning. Ethan stepped out from the shadows, rifle raised but calm. "It's over, Blackwood." Lysander turned toward the sound, half smiling. "Do you really think one man with a rifle changes anything?" "No," Ethan said, "but one truth does." From the tri-line, a new light flickered, not gunfire this time, but screens. Phones, drones, journalists, live streaming from coordinates Anselm had leaked minutes before. The story was already breaking. The same men Lysander had paid were now under global scrutiny. The mercenaries hesitated. Orders meant nothing now. "Sir," one of them called nervously, "they're broadcasting our feeds are online." Lysander's smirk faltered. "What?" Ethan's voice was steady. "You built your empire on silence. Turns out the world's listening now." Lysander's rage broke through his polish. He aimed his pistol at Ethan, finger trembling. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "It just makes you visible." The shot rang out. Ethan staggered back, the bullet grazing his shoulder. He fired once in return, not to kill but to shatter the pistol from Lysander's hand. The gun flew into the dirt. Shouts echoed. The mercenaries dropped their weapons, backing away as sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time. Police, news vans, floodlights cutting through the trees. Olivia emerged from the cabin's rear, holding the tablet like a torch. "It's done, Lysander. Every file, every bribe, every assault, all of it's public now. You're finished." Lysander's eyes flicked between her and Ethan, chest heaving. "You have no idea who I am." "Oh, I do," Olivia said coldly. "You're what happens when power forgets conscience." Officers swarmed the clearing, their commands sharp. Within seconds, Lysander Blackwood, the untouchable mogul, was on his knees in the mud, floodlights painting him small and mortal. Ethan slumped against the porch rail, bleeding but upright. Olivia rushed to him, pressing her scarf to his wound. "Stay with me," she whispered. He managed a faint smile. "Told you we'd stop running." In the distance, a news drone hovered, its camera fixed on them, the burned-out ranger post, the fallen Titan, the man who refused to disappear. As the first light of dawn broke across the ridge, the siege was over. The sound of sirens faded into morning bird song, fragile but real. Ethan looked at Olivia, his voice rough but certain. "You brought him down without pulling a trigger." She met his gaze, eyes wet. "No," she said softly. "We did." He let out a quiet breath, the first peaceful one in years. Down the hill the girls peeked from the cellar steps, blinking at the sunlight. Harper ran to her mother. Alice followed close behind. Ethan knelt to meet them both, pain forgotten. Lysander was being led away, shouting something about lawyers and lies, but no one was listening anymore. For the first time, truth had made more noise than power. Weeks passed before the world stopped holding its breath. The headlines ran for days. Blackwood Empire collapses amid scandal. CEO Olivia Ellison survives corporate kidnapping attempt. Ex-Army medic identified as key witness. Each new report cut another thread in Lysander's web until there was nothing left but truth. The man who once hid behind private jets and shell companies now waited for trial in a concrete cell, no more powerful than the people he'd destroyed. Ethan read the news only once. Then he folded the paper, slid it into the drawer beside his bed, and left it there. He didn't need to relive victory. Survival was enough. They were still staying near the mountains, not at the old cabin, which had burned to ash, but in a restored ranger's house that Anselm had quietly arranged. It had light in the mornings and a view of the river that caught the sky. Most days began the same: coffee, children's laughter, and a silence that no longer felt heavy. Olivia sat on the porch that morning, hair loose, mug warm between her hands. Across the yard, Ethan was showing the girls how to tie fishing line properly. Harper's small voice floated through the air, half confused, half delighted. Alice was patient, coaching her the way her father once coached soldiers: calm, firm, kind. Loop, twist, pull, Ethan said, demonstrating. Like a secret handshake, Alice added. Harper grinned. Between us and the fish. Their laughter rolled through the trees, bright and easy. Olivia couldn't remember when she'd last felt the sound of happiness instead of just hearing it. Ethan caught her watching and smiled faintly. "You're not going to learn anything about fishing from there," he called out. "I'm learning patience," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "That's my job." She smiled. "Not anymore." When he came to sit beside her, the porch boards creaked softly under his weight. His arm was still bandaged beneath his sleeve, but the wound had healed clean. He poured himself coffee from her thermos without asking, the kind of small familiarity that meant more than any confession. "Anselm called this morning," Olivia said. "The board voted to dissolve Blackwood's shares. They're reinstating me as CEO, but—" She hesitated, then looked at it. "I said no." Ethan nodded slowly, unsurprised. "You done fighting that world?" "I'm done living in it," she said. "Power was supposed to protect people. All it did was make me forget how." He studied her face, the tired grace behind her calm. "So what now?" She smiled faintly. "Something quieter. Maybe something honest. The government wants to continue the medical encryption project, but under a foundation instead of a corporation, a non-profit. I'm calling it the Carter-Ellison Initiative." Ethan blinked. "That's not necessary." "Yes," she said, "it is. You didn't just save us. You reminded me that strength doesn't have to come from a boardroom. It can come from a broom closet." He laughed, shaking his head. "That's a terrible slogan. Then you'll have to help me write a better one." They both fell silent again, watching the river wind through the trees. "You ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The uniform? The missions?" He took a long sip of coffee before answering. "Sometimes, but not the fighting. I miss purpose. Out there, everything was clear. Protect, defend, repeat. Here it's quieter. But maybe that's the point." She nodded slowly. "Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's learning how to live after it." He looked at her. Really looked. The woman who'd once been all angles and armor now sitting barefoot on a wooden porch, sunlight in her hair. "You sound like someone who's finally found hers." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'm just borrowing yours." They shared a small, unguarded laugh. Inside, the girls had discovered an old radio. A soft tune drifted through the open window, an old country song about home and second chances. Olivia tilted her head. "You think they'll ever forget what happened?" Ethan shook his head. "I hope not. Forgetting isn't healing, it's pretending. I'd rather they remember that people can do terrible things, but people can also stop them." She smiled faintly. "You always find the moral angle, don't you?" He shrugged. Occupational hazard. For a while they just sat in comfortable silence, listening to the children sing off-key in the background. The world no longer demanded anything from them. When Olivia finally spoke again, her voice was soft. "I used to measure success in numbers, stock prices, margins, deals. Now I think it's this." She gestured toward the yard, where Harper was laughing as Alice showed her how to cast a line. "A morning where nobody's afraid." Ethan followed her gaze. "That's a good metric." She turned toward him. "Stay," she said quietly. "When all this ends, stay here. With us." He looked at her for a long time, the kind of look that carried both hesitation and inevitability. "You sure you want a janitor in your new life?" She smiled, eyes bright. "No. I want the man who stopped pretending to be one." Something unspoken settled between them. Not the rush of romance, but the certainty of two people who had already chosen each other long before they said it aloud. The sun climbed higher, spilling gold over the porch. Olivia leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. He didn't move away. Down by the water, Alice shouted, "We caught one." Ethan stood, grinning. "Guess my lesson worked." He started down the steps, but Olivia caught his hand. "Ethan," she said softly, "you didn't just save us. You reminded me that power means nothing without mercy." He met her eyes, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And mercy means nothing without courage." They walked toward the river together. The air smelled of wet pine and sunlight, and for the first time in a long time, life felt simple. The girls held up their catch, small, silver, alive, and laughed, until the sound echoed through the valley. Ethan crouched beside them, showing how to release it back into the water. As the fish slipped free and vanished downstream, Olivia realized the truth of it. Survival wasn't the end of their story, it was the beginning of healing. She looked at Ethan, at their daughters side by side, and at the quiet world finally unbroken around them. And in that stillness, peace didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like arrival. Months later, the river ran calm again. Wider now after spring rains, its surface broken only by sunlight and the ripples of skipping stones. Two small figures, Harper and Alice, stood at the water's edge, their laughter blending with the soft hum of the forest. Each toss of a stone carried a challenge, a cheer, a memory of the months that had reshaped their young lives. Behind them, Olivia and Ethan watched from the porch of the small home they'd rebuilt on the same ridge where everything once burned. The air smelled of cedar and bread cooling on the windowsill. The chaos of the past felt distant, not forgotten, but softened by time and forgiveness. Ethan leaned against the railing, a quiet pride in his posture. "They've gotten good at that," he said. Olivia smiled. "You'd think they were training for a championship." He chuckled. "In a way, they are. Learning how to let go." She turned toward him, eyes warm. "You mean like we did?" He thought for a moment. "Yeah, maybe that's what life is, throwing the heavy things until they finally stop sinking." A gentle breeze lifted her hair. "You always did have a poetic streak hidden under all that discipline." He smiled faintly. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." They stood in silence for a while, watching the girls build a tiny fort of stones and branches. There was peace in the scene, not the fragile kind that breaks under worry, but the kind built through fire and earnings. "Anselm called again this morning," Olivia said. "Lysander's trial starts next week. He's pleading guilty to most of the charges." Ethan nodded. "Means he's already lost." She sighed. "I thought I'd feel relief. But it's not that. It's just quiet." "That's how peace feels," he said softly. "Unearned at first, then necessary." Her gaze lingered on him. "And you? What now?" He looked toward the river, the girls, the open sky. "Now I teach Alice how to live without fear. Maybe show Harper a few tricks too. And if there's still time, fix that old truck before winter." Olivia smiled. "Simple plans." "The best kind," he replied. A long pause followed, not awkward but full of unspoken gratitude. She broke it with a soft laugh. "You know, when I met you, I thought you were just a quiet janitor who didn't know his place." He glanced sideways. "And now I know you were the only one who did." He didn't answer, but his eyes said enough. Humility wrapped in affection, the kind of understanding that doesn't need words. The girls came running up the hill, their faces flushed with joy. "Mom, Dad, we built a bridge," Harper shouted. Olivia knelt, brushing the damp hair from her daughter's forehead. "A bridge?" Alice nodded proudly. "So the frogs can cross without getting their feet cold." Ethan laughed, crouching beside them. "That's a good reason to build anything." Olivia smiled, watching the makeshift bridge shimmer in the light. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "We build things not to protect ourselves, but to help others cross safely." Ethan looked at her, then at the children, and nodded. "That's the real kind of power." The words hung in the air like a benediction. Soft, steady, true. As the sun dipped low behind the ridge, painting the sky in quiet gold, the four of them stood together, two families who had once been strangers bound, now by shared scars and hard-earned peace. Olivia reached for Ethan's hand, and he didn't pull away. There were no promises, no declarations, just the rhythm of the river and the laughter of children echoing through the hills, proof that life could start again even after fear. In the distance, a flock of birds took flight, tracing the last light of day. The narrator's voice would end here, gentle and reflective. In a world obsessed with control, sometimes the greatest strength is learning to protect, not possess. Power fades, money shifts, names get forgotten. But kindness leaves a legacy that doesn't burn. So tell us, wherever you're watching from, What part of this story stayed with you? What word describes how it made you feel? The final image would linger, the two children releasing one last stone into the river, watching it skip once twice, then sink gently beneath the surface. The ripples spread outward, circles of light across the water until everything returned to stillness. And in that stillness, their story, their human legacy, lived on.